I hope someone's monitoring the chat because I can't hear anything. I don't
I
think
can,
they don't have.
I can't hear anything either.
I don't think they've started yet, and I think they just keep the mic off to keep.
Just so y'all
all
know, it's not working in the room either, so we'll get it working in the room here in a second.
Is this better? Hey, okay, today's meeting is going to be dedicated to going over what went on at the state legislature this year and the impacts it has on us. And we're fortunate, Toby Overdorf, our
Is on mute?
No. Because mute has a red line through it. It's that on their end, they muted everybody
Yeah, right, they're
until the
supposed to.
meeting started, and
Yeah.
now they can't.
Mute. Okay, but you can hear them.
Part of the general is going to be literally dedicated every single year, $100 million towards land purchases. And that will be in the land acquisition trust fund. So if we don't use all that money, it'll roll over and then it'll continue to grow. But that's something I think that's pretty huge and what has been requested for quite some time. We have within the basin management action plans, there is a variety of things now. This created the Indian River Lagoon Protection Program, and I was kind of ticked off because it didn't include our entire area within it. However, it actually stops about Fort Pierce and then goes north. But what it does do is it covers every single basin management action plan. So when I brought in and my request on that, why didn't we also include the area south? Is because if we did include the area south, it would extend all the way through into Lake Okeechobee, and we already have a basin management action plan that is covering those areas. So it was the easiest delineation point, but it doesn't lessen any protections whatsoever. In fact, for the first time ever, we're actually having the total maximum daily loads being addressed by local government and part of their comprehensive plan. So in other words, we have to have an updated list every 5 years as to actual projects, the cost of the projects, and how those projects are in fact attacking the total maximum daily loads for a variety of things, whether it be nutrients, whether it be oxygen, whether it be other items that have been identified within that basin management action plan as out of compliance. So literally for the first time ever, we're seeing those things move forward. There's a grant program that is now being set out. So we're renamed it, but it's the wastewater grant that allows for individuals to then get monies to hook up to sewer lines. It allows for individuals to update their septic tanks to the newest septic tanks, which is has a requirement for lower overall nutrients and specifically nitrogen within those. We have additional in there where local governments are required now to plan 10 years out for their septic. I would like to have it actually at 20 years. And this is for new sewer lines. They have to plan that out for 10 years now, and then lay out the monies associated with that, what it's going to cost. And then also when there is a new sewer line that's being put in adjacent to a home area, that there is no more septic tanks that are going to be allowed to be constructed. They will be required to hook up, and therefore lowers the overall nutrients. They estimate that roughly 30% of all of our residences throughout the state of Florida, that's a heck of a lot when you look at 26 million people, 30% are on septic tank. So we're trying to lower that number to get it towards a central sewer system. There are also requirements on updating our overall sewer processing, making sure that nutrients are brought down within that. There's a separate bill that's dealing with biosolids, and this is something that is going to be continuing to go on, but it enhances the biosolid bill that was passed a couple of years ago that looks at not being able to spread biosolid except for very certain circumstances, and nothing within our basin is going to be allowed to have that spread throughout there. Additionally, gosh, I mean, this is looking at ways to purchase land and requiring that no longer do you have to have 47 different reviews of a property if it's below $5 million. They can go ahead, they can purchase the property. And so therefore, we're not waiting and waiting and waiting until we actually are able to purchase a property if it's below that $5 million threshold. And that was increased. Previously, it was at $1 million where you could buy something without all those extra items on it. And I think it's 3 different appraisals, et cetera. This now has it at 5 million and below. You're able to do a less intense review of that. So I think all of those things add into being able to purchase land quickly, to deal with nutrients. I mean, I am just, this it started out as an 81-page bill. It finished as a 95-page bill. So I am not doing it justice by not giving you everything within it, but I'm happy to answer questions on that. We did rule enactment. Another one of my bills was doing a rule ratification on specifically OSTDS systems or the septic tank systems, and decreasing the amount of nitrogen and phosphorus that's allowed within those systems specifically. So another way that we're reducing the output of any new septic tank that's put out there, this now reduces the output of those potentially harmful nutrients. So, I mean, there is just so much that is within this bill, within the enacting bills, within the biosolids bill. And so I'm going to be here to kind of answer questions. I just wanted to kind of go through some of that. We're also dealing with, we had a bill regarding non-native species and the sale of venomous reptiles. We've had expansion upon the Python program. We've had incredible funding, another $300 million towards Everglades funding, and some of that is in the handout that I gave you all. It's on the right side. There is again, over and over and over again, a lot of commitment to the environment. What's interesting or not interesting is that when we go ahead with environmental bills up in the House, on the committee side, there's a fair amount of discussion. By the time we get to the floor, these are not the inflammatory bills that we're talking about. There's a lot of folks there that have said, you know, this is a great opportunity, a great bill, and it's also done by a lot of the co-sponsors that sign on to these things and realize, you know, the work that we've done in the beginning has really been good. So looking forward to any feedback. There is a commitment to this region, and I can't tell you enough. I know a lot of it is your advocacy and saying, hey, we're here and we want to make sure we're heard, but you have been. And over again, there is a commitment to the environment that has gone from the governor's office all the way through staff level, and we continue to do that. So I know that you all have some comments and questions. I'm sticking to the environmental bills and not all the other bills that have been out there, but I wanted to just go from there. So.
Thank you, Toby. If we can hold the questions for Toby till after Eve and Gil. Eve Samples of Friends of the Everglades and Gil Smart with Vote Water are gonna have their perspective on what happened.
Thanks, Charles. Can you hear me okay? About now. Okay, thank you, Charles, and thanks Representative Overdorf. For the record, we did invite our whole local delegation to come meet with the Rivers Coalition today, and Representative, you were the only one who accepted and attended, so we do appreciate that. We don't settle here in Stewart or with the Rivers Coalition. We always want and need more, and I think it's really important to evaluate what the Florida legislature does every single year. So we're going to attempt to lay out our perspective on that. Friends of the Everglades has made a commitment to legislative accountability, tracking environmental bills, helping you understand what they mean. So I'm just going to introduce Gil, who's going to walk you through some of the bills, some of which Representative Overdorf alluded to. So a little background, if you haven't been following the Florida legislature, it started meeting in March. It met for 60 days for its annual session, and it wrapped up on May 5th. So during that time, we saw a flurry of bills. We saw some bad bills that passed. We saw some good bills that didn't pass. We saw really big budget allocations that mean a variety of things for the St. Lucie River and the environment as a whole. And then I just want to go back. Actually, can we go to the agenda again, Mickey? Sorry. So we framed this discussion around a question. Did the Florida legislature fix our toxic algae problem? And I just want us all to keep that in mind because that's what the Rivers Coalition is about. It's about stopping toxic discharges to the St. Lucie River. And to fix our toxic algae problem in Florida, we really need to do two things. We need to fix water management, how we move water in and out of the lake. That relies a lot on the Army Corps of Engineers, but also the state of Florida and the Water Management District. And it also means we need to have nutrient pollution reductions that are enforceable, rules with teeth. So those two things are absolutely essential, and we have not seen that emerge from the Florida legislature. So there have been some attempts to address nutrients pollution in our waterways. They have not been adequate, and that's why we're sitting here now in 2023, 5 years since the toxic 2018 discharges with a high lake and toxic algae in the lake and the very serious potential for discharges. So that's the backdrop behind this discussion. I want to introduce Gil Smart, our policy director at Friends of the Everglades. He's also executive director at Vote Water, to walk through some of the bills. And then I know we're going to want to have a discussion about what the legislature can do in the future to address this reality that we live with every single year. Thanks.
Thanks, Eve. Yeah, this is, as Eve just mentioned, this is almost kind of a rhetorical question. Did we solve our algae problem? The answer is no. Mickey, can you pull up some of those photos from the Calusa Waterkeeper? So I don't know how many of you folks follow the Calusa Waterkeeper on Facebook. They posted some pics earlier this week. Hang on. It may be. Okay. No. Okay, all right, here. So these are some aerial shots that the Calusa Waterkeeper got. Caloosahatchee, where exactly are they?
Mostly in the southwest.
Yeah. So the south and the east portions of the lake are already seeing this. You know, it's not yet June. So, and the reality is we're at a point where algal blooms are becoming, they're not only becoming, they've become an annual event on the lake, and it's likely to remain that way for the foreseeable future. I mean, there's likely not going to be a spring from here on in when we don't see something like this. So that adds a little bit of urgency to what we're talking about here, what we're doing. If you can go back to the slide. This is so this is a rhetorical question. Did we solve our algae problem? But I have to look at it in a holistic sense, which is to say that there were a lot of projects, as Representative Overdorf referred to, that address some of these issues. At the same time, there was other legislation that frankly is probably going to make matters worse. So it's, you know, it's like one step forward, one step back type of thing. We focused, and go to the first slide, Mickey, the next slide. We focused, for those of you who've been at these meetings the last couple of months, you know that we've talked a lot about, we use the term session of sprawl, to talk about what was going on this legislative session, that there were so many bills out there that seemed to favor the development community, that disempowered citizens. The one that we have paid some of the most attention to, that we called the most damaging bill of the year, Senate Bill 540, was actually signed into law by Governor DeSantis last night. Like what, 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, something like that. Unfortunately, this hasn't gotten a lot of press. It had been getting a lot of press, but hasn't given DeSantis's presidential launch last night, or launch, crash and burn, or however you might characterize that. But this is the one, you've heard us talk about this. This is the one that makes it so that citizens who challenge a comprehensive plan amendment and lose have to pay the other side's legal fees. You know, the whole argument against this is that, you know, because those legal fees can get into the 6 figures when you talk about what's the term for the developers who can interveners such as developers, you're talking it's going to become prohibitive, and you're basically going to get rid of these sorts of challenges. And it removes a layer of our position is that it removes a layer of oversight. It's going to supercharge sprawl in these communities. As it says, bad for the water, bad for the Everglades, bad for Florida. It was signed into law despite veto requests from Friends of the Everglades, SCCF's Sanibel Captiva, Thousand Friends of Florida. Numerous conservation organizations had implored the governor to veto this, and ultimately that was ignored. So this was pretty much, from our perspective, one of the worst bills this session. It's now going to be law. Next slide, please. We remain concerned, you probably heard about this, and I know we've talked about it previously, a fertilizer ban that was basically snuck into the budget bill, Senate Bill 2500, line 146, which funds a study by IFAS to take a look at seasonal bans and whether summertime bans are effective. And this prevents municipalities from adopting or amending fertilizer ordinances with summer blackout periods for the next year, while this study is being done. And the implication is that that's probably going to result in legislation next year, which could seek to make that sort of prohibition permanent. So again, and this was done in sort of a really sort of clandestine fashion. It was stuck into the budget bill with no chance for debate or public input, no public notification of this. People just happened to catch it. And again, once again, the conservation community has sort of mobilized against this. They're asking DeSantis to veto line item 146, which is the appropriation for the study. If the appropriation is eliminated, the basis for the ban, the IFA study goes away. So we have not heard anything on this. There's been some other conservation organizations, very prominent ones, that have come out against this, asking for the veto this past week. So hopefully, ultimately, that's going to be scuttled. Because if we start getting prohibitions on fertilizer bans in Florida, it's going to, again, that goes directly back to the whole issue of nutrients in the water. When the fertilizer runs off the fields, off the lawns, that's nutrients going directly into our waterways. That's the purpose for these bans. That's the purpose for the summertime bans. When you're getting the heaviest rains, you don't want people to fertilize then, because it's all going to wash away. If the state cracks down on those bans, it seems almost a guaranteed thing that we're going to see more nutrients in the waterways. So go ahead, Mickey. I want to talk a little bit about this, as Rep. Overdorf did. This was a bright spot in the legislative session, House Bill 1379. The Indian River Lagoon Protection Program, Governor DeSantis talked about this in his executive order. This sets the sort of parameters for that, identifying projects, prioritizing projects for water quality restoration, enhanced water quality monitoring in the lagoon, reducing nutrient. This is telling DEP to do these things, reduce nutrient contributions to the IRL from a variety of sources, and supporting innovative nature-based solutions, including living shorelines, wetland restorations, and seagrass recovery. As Representative Overdorf referred to, there's a whole lot more in this bill, but I wanted to highlight one thing in particular. The bill acknowledges that, this is from the Senate analysis. The bill acknowledges that agricultural best management practices alone will not achieve the necessary load reductions in Basin Management Action Plan, and creates a water quality improvement grant program to fund restoration projects. I found that line to be fairly significant. This is the state essentially admitting that these BMPs aren't doing the job, on BMPs. No, they are not. We do not measure the effectiveness of BMPs. So, right, exactly. To what extent and by whom? But this is with, but you're talking about when, if they're not enrolled in the BMPs. Right, but those who have adopted the BMPs, the basin is not. Okay, but they're inspected to see that they're following the parameters of the BMP.
The best management practice, not of the solution.
Correct.
Throughout the base management action, base management areas, they are required to be monitored by the that's part of this bill, that then the local government has to come up with plans that deals with the specifics. It's not a point source, so we all are talking about right now. The word monitor. So this year there was on dealing with that. The DMDLs have been in place for some odd years.
You guys are saying.
Okay, that's really been enforced.
Is this working? Nikki?
We'll go back and forth.
Yeah.
TMDLs have been in place, but there's been no enforcement on it. You are correct on that. Until this year, there has been, however, BMPs have been in place, and that's been an inspected program and a required inspecting program for if you're not doing your BMPs, quote unquote, voluntarily. Then now there was an enforcement 2 years ago put in place where DEP has to do the inspection. If you recall, when she was Commissioner of Agriculture, Nikki Fried was, she transferred roughly 12,000 cases to DEP, and then DEP received that and could not deal with that because they didn't have enough manpower to deal with it. Manpower then was allocated again this year and increased. So hopefully we'll get additional full-time employees to deal with that.
Yeah, if those of you who follow this issue recall this was sort of a big political football for a while, because again, there was this question over who had authority to enforce these. And FDEP said it was DAX and DAX said it was FDEP. And so it was kind of a standoff for a while, and Representative Overdorf is correct. Then DAX transmitted a whole bunch of these to DEP, which didn't have the capacity to deal with it. I remember speaking with some of the DEP officials at the time about this issue, but the question is, and I think this goes back to what Todd said, when you talk about BMPs, best management practices are a set of practices that if you undertake them, it's supposed to result in certain nutrient reductions to a certain level. And the question is, do they work? In the basin, are you able to then measure fewer nutrients in the water, as a result of these BMPs? And I don't know that that's been definitively, answered or done. And which, is something that I think we've been stumping for quite some time. Okay, we have these rules as to what we're going to do, how we're going to run things. Do they work? Do we know if they're working? That sort of thing. So that's sort of a key aspect of it. Well, yeah, the state DEP came out with the BMAP update for the St. Lucie Basin a couple weeks ago. They're looking to extend it out another 5 years because they're not going to hit the 15-year reduction in nutrients. We're not, whatever progress we're making, we're not making enough progress. And again, I think the photos that we were showing earlier kind of suggest that that's the case. Let's move on to the next slide, please. Some good bills that we were in favor of that didn't go anywhere. The recommendations of the Blue Green Algae Task Force. This was the second year in a row that this was proposed. The Senate bill actually got a hearing, although most of the bill was gutted with a strike all amendment, and then it went nowhere after that. The House bill never even got a hearing. The Safe Waterways Act, House Bill 177, Senate Bill 172, requires notification when waterways are contaminated by fecal bacteria. I don't believe either of those even got a hearing. The Everglades Protection Area 175 and Senate Bill 192 would have added a layer of state oversight for comprehensive plan amendments within 2 miles of the Everglades Protection Area. It had looked like that was moving, but then it just died. So it didn't. Next slide, please. Okay, these are bills. These are bad bills, sprawl related bills that we'd flagged that passed. 718 local government was an interesting one because that started out as an annexation bill. We'd been following House Bill 41 and Senate Bill 856. which would have prohibited citizen initiatives or referendum on land development regulations. I always give the example of City of Stewart has Martin County has a 4-story height limit. What if Martin County decided they were going to allow you to build up to 8 stories? And they penned land development regulations saying that you could build up to 8 stories, and citizens such as you folks thought that was a bad idea, and you tried to get a referendum going to have them rescind that. Under this bill, you couldn't do it. So that House Bill 41, Senate Bill 856 initially had that language. Those bills died. 856 was actually pulled for lack of support. Last 2 weeks of session, all of a sudden, Senate Bill 718 gets amended. That language gets inserted into that bill, and that bill passes. Senate Bill 170, local ordinances. This was described this year as the mother of all preemption bills. It essentially makes it easier for businesses to sue local governments over ordinances that impact the bottom line to a certain extent. That could theoretically include environmental regulations. Next slide, please. Some good news. What we had flagged as the by far worst legislation proposed this session, that was House Bill 1197, Senate Bill 1240, land and water management, would have prevented municipalities and counties from establishing their own regs on water quality, water quantity, pollution control, and wetlands. Those went nowhere. We and other conservation organizations sort of launched a campaign against that, and there was a lot of media on that. Luckily, those died, but you know, bad ideas in Tallahassee never truly die. They just get resurrected next session. And then we got down here mixed bag. Representative Overdorf referenced this House Bill 1405. This was new rules on biosolids. This will boost conversion of Class A to Class AA biosolids. It'll take nasty stuff and make it slightly less nasty. The concern about this was that there had been provisions in this bill that would have further restricted the land application of Class B biosolids. Class B biosolids is the really nasty stuff with all sorts of pathogens, heavy metals, all sorts of nutrients. Those measures were stripped out of the bill before it was passed. Yeah, again, mixed bag. It's always good to, you know, to make bad stuff better. But I know there's significant concern in some other watersheds where this stuff is still going to be spread. There were, again, proposed new regs on that, and they got killed. Last slide here. We're just highlighting this. This was from the governor's executive order on water back in January. And again, this was our issue when we talk about the cession of sprawl. This was from his order. He's ordering DEP to partner with the DEO to improve local government long-term comprehensive planning that ensures sustainable growth, protecting taxpayer investigation in Everglades Restoration Project, major land conservation and water quality protection programs. Representative Overdorf talked about programs, legislation that are going to sort of help with this. But again, from our perspective, the cession of sprawl, there was a lot of legislation passed this year, and the big bill was just signed last night that actually goes against this, that actually undermines local government long-term comprehensive planning and is going to help facilitate reckless growth, in our opinion, which Florida, as you know, with 1,000 people moving here a day, absolutely cannot have. So I'll take some questions, and then we'll just do some Q&A essentially with Representative Overdorf, who I also want to thank for being here. As Eve noted, we invited Representative John Snyder. We invited Senator Gail Harold to be here today. Both said they weren't able to come. We've invited them, FYI, for our next meeting in June. So hopefully they'll take us up on that invitation as well. Go ahead, Diane. Mhm.
Not allowed on farms in the Treasure Coast. I have contact with local government, and they have to send North Florida. Then it runs down to Kissimmee, so we only get it back from them. So it is of no use to us if we still allow all of that so-called biosolid fertilizer to be put on farms unless there are maximum amounts for
Mhm.
the
Mhm.
Is that picked up?
Can you speak to that?
So the question was basically, is there, and forgive me if I don't get it exactly right, but looking at ways of regulating the maximum amounts of the biosolid fertilizer, if you will, And you're talking, and I believe you were wanting to talk about class AA, but I think you're conflating two issues with B and AA. Ma'am, I understand. I understand that, but so class AA is labeled, is brought out. The issue with class AA is once it's labeled and once it's given to a distributor, there's no tracking of it from there. Just like the fertilizer you might get at Home Depot, et cetera. The other name for some of this stuff, and you from the north, you might have known this name, Milorganite. It's the same thing. It's a class AA, and it's I've never used it, but apparently it is holds water better. It holds actually the fertilizer better than if you were to go and get the pelletized stuff. That being said, there is no requirement to track where this material is going once it has been made and once it has been labeled. The levels of phosphorus and nitrogen that are within it are basically based on how much material is mixed in with it. It's about 70% vegetation that's mixed in with the material. It's composted and then brought out from there. As far as the levels of phosphorus or nitrogen, I can't speak to the exact levels of that. The overall, I think what you're talking about as far as what's being spread on the fields, it's not the AA biosolid. It is, in fact, the class B that's being spread on fields. And we've seen more and more of that actually in the St. Johns Basin, more than the areas around the Kissimmee River, et cetera. It's been shipped north for the most part, and the people in Brevard, the people in Indian River, which are now part of that southern area associated with the St. Johns and all that's going north, they're really not happy about that whatsoever. So that's why I'm saying we have to get a comprehensive plan to deal with biosolid that is more than just AA and more than just spreading it on fields. I completely agree with you. There has to be a comprehensive policy for that. And that is something that we are committed on working on.
Are you planning to? Are you planning to put through a bill to use wastewater to energy instead, so we wouldn't have this problem with the biosolids? And it would then, though it's expensive to buy the equipment and install it, it will actually pretty much run itself. And then the more of this wastewater it gets, considering that we're going to have more with the more building that we're doing, the more people that will have pay for itself, basically.
So the answer to your question is no, we are not going to say that you're going to do one technology over another. As legislators, we cannot mandate a certain technology to take care of that. What we can do is say that this is an issue that we need to deal with. This is whether it be the state of Florida, whether it be local government, you have to deal with biosolids in such a way. But we're not going to dictate that a municipality must use a certain technology over another. I agree with you. I've seen that technology. It is very expensive, but the other side of it, it does produce a return associated with it. At this point, you know, everything is open and is on the table, and I'm not going to say no to anything else. So,
Other questions from the audience?
My issue is to get back to something that Todd said. And that's the fact that I had spoken to DEP and I asked them, are you measuring the water concentration of nitrogen and phosphorus that is above a particular watershed in the Kissimmee River Valley? And they said no, but I believe they are working on it. And the reason why that's important is because the best management practices might not be, there might be something better than the best management practices. We don't know how well they're doing, and they're not measuring the concentration that is coming off of these projects. The elephant in the room is this: legacy phosphorus within the Kissimmee River Valley and legacy phosphorus within Lake Okeechobee could be more important and more polluting than what's coming in from additions from AA or BB fertilizer or et cetera. We have no knowledge of what the recycle is from legacy phosphorus back into our aquatic systems. And I don't know if the legislature can do anything about that.
So the legislature is not directly dealing with that. I would say that an appropriation that would deal with the soils associated with this, that have been settled back down to the basin of bottom of Lake Okeechobee, that would be the ultimate way to deal with it, most certainly. Looking at dredging projects, looking at ways that we can get rid of that soil and get it out of there. There was a bill this year that did not make it through that dealt with the requirement for mechanical removal of vegetation rather than spraying. I fully support that. I think that we need to head towards a mechanical removal. That way it takes that material, as you know, directly out of the lake, takes that the legacy phosphorus and nitrogen out. That material that can then, in most cases, be reused and applied as a organic fertilizer, if you will, in other areas. But I think that we do need to attack the legacy phosphorus and nitrogen. I 100% agree with you. It is hard being the only biologist in the house and dealing with roughly 80 other attorneys up there. So to educate them is the hardest part about that, and to do it in such a way that shows the benefits associated with it. We have obviously we allocate a lot of different things up there, but I certainly would love to deal with legacy phosphorus and nitrogen. I couldn't agree more. Just to let you know, though, also, you all have seen the blue-green algae update that they do every week. I'm sorry, about once a month or whatever. The reporting for May 12th to May 18th, we do look at microsystems. They do look at all those different types of stuff. So there is monitoring that's being done with it. And Gil, as what you alluded to in the very southwest area of the lake and the western area, they did in fact, have that over there. If I recall correctly, though, there were not the microcystin that was found in there. And if you look at this, the harmful algal bloom was not found to be within that area there, even though there was algae certainly reported there. And that's coming. That's not coming from me. That's coming from DEP in their report there. Did you want to add something, Jackie?
This is going back to you talking about the Indian River Protection Plan, and it's stopping basically at Fort Pierce. Does that mean that no money will come to us here?
Thank you so much for the question. The answer is no. The money will be coming. It is an area, though, that's focused on the nutrients. It specifically was brought in because those areas have not received as much attention that the St. Lucie Basin has. And so they looped a bunch of different basin management action plans together, as well as protected areas together, if you will, and the ones that are becoming on as basin management action plans. You can breathe easy. You're still protected. Yes, you are certainly competing and still getting money. Yep.
Go ahead, Casey.
Thanks for being here. You mentioned you were the only biologist in the House, and there is a brand new freshman legislator, Rep. Cross, who's an environmental scientist. She's the one that sponsored the Blue-Green Algae Task Force recommendations implementation bill. Is that something you'd be willing to work with for next session to move forward?
Lindsay and I have worked together, absolutely. And I'll clarify my comment. I'm a biologist. She has an environmental science degree, very different degrees. That being said, I've worked with Lindsay on a variety of different things. I don't always make the decisions as to what bills move ahead and don't, but she and I work on a variety of things together. She was a supporter of the ultimate bill that we did pass, which was 1379.
Oh, hang on. Yeah, go ahead.
So Representative Overdorf, I'm not sure if it was addressed in this year's budget or not, but the state of Florida has allocated at least $45 million for innovative technologies to address algal blooms, harmful algal blooms. And the Blue-Green Algae Task Force, which Governor DeSantis created in 2019, has expressed some concerns about unintended consequences of deploying these relatively new algicides into our waterways. And actually, DEP is working on the permit for those substances right now. So my question for you is whether the legislature can help us get some more oversight. We don't want to blast the St. Lucie River with algicide and learn later that also a lot of good algae was killed off and we have a whole other set of problems.
Thank you for the question. The area that last year we had a presentation there was a water program put on by Associated Industries. There was a variety at the environmental permitting school down in Marco. And yes, there's certainly some innovative technology that's going. I couldn't agree more. I mean, I've not been a fan of when they released an insect to deal with Melaleuca. And I was worried, what are the unintended consequences there? So yes, that is an area that we're certainly monitoring, looking at. I know in conversations with Secretary Hamilton, it was an area that he was concerned about, but at the same time, there was a lot of mechanical sides to it that they were looking at within the lake that was basically doing a process of cleaning the water mechanically. And I don't know, though, that is going to be something that we're going to be able to scale to really have a good effect. The other side is with the algicides, you're exactly right. What are the unintended consequences there and what happens otherwise? So yes, we are keeping an eye on it, and we will be hopefully allocating additional monies towards that. And the allocation of the resource, the oversight, yes. Mhm.
All right, I have two questions. I'm gonna monopolize the microphone for a little bit longer. Building on what Casey said, why is there so little appetite in the legislature to adopt the additional recommendations from the Blue-Green Algae Task Force? As noted, that bill has come out 2 years in a row. Is it just a Democrat-Republican thing? I mean, because the bills were sponsored by Democrats and given the numbers, that's not necessarily going to make the cut. But why are we not seeing Republican legislators such as yourself sponsor this type of legislation? Obviously Florida brought together the most eminent scientists in the state to study this problem, issue a series of recommendations. Some of the recommendations were adopted, but certainly not all of them. Why is this not moving?
Well, first of all, the last year's blue-green algae bill, not the specific this year, last year's took Senate Bill 712, rearranged about 8 words in it, and then they called it the new Blue-Green Algae Task Force recommendation. That's why that didn't move forward, because literally it wasn't any quote unquote new bill, and the areas for 712 hadn't moved ahead. This year's bill, I never got a chance to move it forward or not. I was not a chairman associated with either water quality or the environmental side. So I never had an opportunity to even review the bill as a committee member and or a House member that could have brought that forward. I was frankly consumed with 1379, the 95 pages associated with that. And that does have, although not spelled out, certainly has some of the recommendations broadly within that bill. And so I think there is an appetite to do right. This comprehensive bill of 1379 typically would be about 10 or 12 separate individual bills. But there was the appetite instead to bring it to the people that are quote unquote experts in the field. And myself, Chairman Payne, who runs the infrastructure side, wanted to bring this forward over in the Senate. Senator Broder was very adamant about making this pass, as well as Senator Albritton, who's going to be our Senate president.
And then I'm going to circle back to the one that we had identified. I told you Senate Bill 540 as one of the worst bills that we saw this year. You voted for that. Tell us what your thought process was. Why?
So today's forum was about the blue-green algae and what we've done with that. I haven't really gotten into Senate Bill 540 other than it expands upon accountability, if you will. And so I'd prefer to have another conversation with you on that, because I really didn't prepare to give you a great conversation on that today. I prepared on environmental bills and didn't feel that was something that we were going to be looking at today for harmful algal bloom. Yeah, sure.
Do you see a connection between sound growth policies in Florida and clean water?
So I think that's why we have that within 1379 as far as a requirement for local government to put in their comprehensive plan. Number one, how they're dealing with total maximum daily load, how they're lowering nutrients, how they're monitoring that every 5 years, and how they're expanding their sewer lines. So yes, I mean, obviously there's a need for comprehensive planning. There's a need for bringing that through our local government system. Martin County does a good job. I don't disagree with that. There are some other governments out there within our state and our 67 counties and 411 separate municipalities that don't do as good a job, and that that tend to be way out on the other side. And that tends to bring forth legislation when some of those folks are bad actors. I don't think this is intended to go after Martin County or the city of Stewart in any way.
Other questions? Diane, I'll get to you, but I want to make sure if anybody else has one. Does anybody else have a question? Go ahead, Mayor.
Representative Over, thank you for coming. Can we circle back to the base management action plans? And can you give us an overview? I'm going to give you kind of my understanding of it, because we've seen it, they don't seem to be clearly working, and we've seen examples of the timeline getting kicked another 5 years down the road as recently as the past month or so. From some of the comments you've just made, so we have local governments that are in charge of monitoring and acting some of those practices. And the term monitoring is being used in two different ways around the room. We have monitoring of the actual practices, containing water, managing fertilizer. And then we have monitoring as in water quality testing for nitrogen and phosphorus and other pollutants. And it's, as you know, and I know, it's a very complicated issue to track and control non-point source pollutions, but we also know the problem, it's not working. So we have local governments, and then do we have a state agency? Is, if it's in the South Florida Water Management District region, my understanding is they're in charge of broader water quality monitoring. And then FDACS is in charge of making sure those practices in terms of what, say, an agricultural owner might do on their land to hit the goals of the other term of pollution reduction. And if they're not doing those practices, FDACS then refers to DEP for the enforcement of that. Am I correct in that so far? And then you were saying now going forward, an agency is going to be monitoring with water samples to see, not monitoring best management practice, but monitoring water samples of the pollution levels to see if the TMDLs are going to be hit. Can you give us an overview of that whole cycle and where the three state agencies fall in and local governments, and what the enforcement mechanism is? I know that's a lot.
Thank you for the 4-hour dissertation I'm about to give. The reality is that BMAPs have been on, as you know, have been on the books for quite some time. Have they been successful? I'm the first one to say no. They have identified a problem. They have looked at a solution. And now we are in the process of, again, realizing that we need to put some teeth behind this, that we need to go ahead and monitor. We need to then not only monitor, but to create additional projects that deal with that. The bill specifically deals with local government held land, local government controlled issues. That's then the local government's responsibility. DEP is the ultimate responsibility within the state, as was allocated from EPA. DEP then makes decisions to allocate some of that responsibility to Department of Agriculture and the various water management districts as well. They then work, quote unquote, together to determine if in fact the water quality is getting better. Ultimately, DEP is responsible for water quality, for the nutrients associated with that water quality, and for monitoring that water quality. But they do that in consortium with in our case, with the Water Management District, South Florida Water Management District. And that has been an area that I've been looking at. I think that we have to have better coordination between those two agencies and sharing of data it's gotten better. And I think that there has been a better collaboration with it. For a while there, I think everybody was in their own box, but it certainly has gotten better. And it has to, because we haven't really adjusted TMDLs in 20 years. We haven't looked at, we have to continue to look at new and emerging technology, including natural technology. We've seen how marshes work so well. I mean, we've seen how not just mechanical, which can cost a heck of a lot of money, but the natural areas. We need to continue to buy additional lands, and so this bill lays out all of those things: to buy additional lands, to do the monitoring, to do a long-term planning with it, to do monitoring of projects, to add various technologies with it. So I would say that I'm optimistic about this and moving forward. I'm excited about finally being able to address some of these things, but there is definitely more work to be done. No doubt about it. And, you know, I've made a commitment to this, to y'all several years ago, to be working on this stuff. We'll continue to do so and do the best that I can. As I know I said this before, I'm one of 120, but I tend to, as I've risen up through, people come to me with water problems, with water projects, with different things like that. I ask for your advocacy. I had the pleasure of meeting with Eve and Gil beforehand. Eve called me with about a week and a half left to go and said, hey, you got to deal with this and this. And one of them, come on now, one of them was the fertilizer. And I literally marched right across. And so going back on the fertilizer study, yes, it's a 1 year potential ban associated with it, but the other side of that is it gives it back to local government, saying that local government, you have to reduce the nutrients. So how can you do that without doing some kind of a fertilizer ban? So those two things are in a juxtaposition at the moment. So I think that even if that was to go ahead and go forward, I think that there's some room to have that still have a fertilizer issue, a fertilizer ban. And it doesn't take any fertilizer ban out. So if there's a fertilizer ban in place now, it stays there. It just says you can't modify it. You can't enact a new one for at least the next year.
What's going to happen? Who's going to be in charge of monitoring TMDLs in various basins, and what's going to happen if they're not met?
I'm not going to repeat what Jackie said, because I'm more optimist. The DEP, in fact, goes ahead and will be the ultimate requirement to monitor those. And they may delegate some of the monitoring to the water management districts, but DEP is ultimately in charge, and they are required to then also do reporting to us as well.
Let me real quick, let me put a real fine point, I guess, on what we're talking about here. So DEP ultimately has a responsibility for monitoring water quality. Is that correct? What happens when DEP tests the water and find, man, we really got high levels of phosphorus going on here? Whose responsibility is it then to figure out why that is and try to follow up and figure out who that is?
So you have to look up, so to answer your question, number one, you have to look upstream. And right now, I can't say that it's, Bob's golf course, Joe's farm, or the entire residential development that is to the right. What I can see is what's coming downstream. Then I can go and check those individual sites. Do they have BMPs in place? Do they have nutrient reduction in place? Are they on a sewer line? Are they still on septic? So all those things combined, and that's the tedious work that needs to be done. You're exactly right. Those are the things that basin by basin by basin we need to be looking at and fixing and working through the process. It's not an easy process, but it's something that absolutely needs to get done. And I agree with you. It's something that they see a red marker, if you will, and they need to work upstream from that.
Okay, now, I think what I understand you're saying is they will start like in the rivers or the streams. Then when they find it, then they will go up like to the canals and everything and find out where it's coming from.
I can only talk to how I would attack it, but if I had an area that was was high, I would look to the area around it, and what the flow is to that area there. I can't speak to the actual methodology for the agency and what they're going to do. I don't usually speak government speak. So, but I would, in fact, that's how I would attack it if I was researching the area.
Toby, thanks for coming. Blair Wickstrom, Rivers Coalition. I think the fact that you're here is significant. John Snyder, Gail, Harold, they're not here. What we have in the photos that we saw earlier is a pending threat, and it's more than just pending. I mean, the blue-green algae, we saw what happened in 2018, 2016, the lost summer of 2013. That's real. I mean, it's not hypothetical. It's not potentially a named storm that may come. That's there. If we do get weather, we get rain, it's going to be in your district, in our backyard. It's almost a guarantee if we have a wet summer that we're going to get that. So I can't imagine a bigger threat to your district in a disruption of the economy, disruption of way of life, disruption of why people move here than that. That would have to be, I would think, priority one for a representative from this district with that pending threat. And so we have a congressman from this district that has made water a priority. And I think Lieutenant Colonel Polk would probably concur that with our congressman making water a priority, it's made a difference in terms of how the Corps is handling things. And it's been mentioned earlier, our area, and you mentioned, is sort of noticed and I think taken care of because of the advocacy from this area. But then we have a brand new city commissioner who went to the general and spoke to him publicly and said, "We will sue you." And I was, a brand new city commissioner. I thought, well, that's, that's out there. And we had a previous city commissioner that made water a priority. So with all that said, we don't have a champion in Tallahassee from this area. I asked John Snyder, would he be that champion? He didn't want to become that champion. He said he wanted to become the Brian Mast of Tallahassee, and he, as they say now, ghosted us and me on becoming that. You can be that. Tell us how you can become our champion, because you understand what's going on. You understand that threat that's in the lake, but you're not the champion that we need. And if you could tell us how you could become that champion, we would really, really embrace you and look forward to that.
So Blair, every year I've put in, probably the only candidate that has put in a comprehensive review of what I've done on your questionnaire. And every year you have selected somebody who can hardly spell water as their endorsed candidate. That's your decision. Why would I be your champion if every single year you rate me as an F? When all I've done, I go to Tallahassee, you get a bill like this, 95 pages of everything that you asked for. Okay. Did I support the other bill that Gil talked about? No, I didn't, because I never got a chance to. I never even got a chance to look at it. But when I leave here and I go north, people look at me as a person in the House that's looking at comprehensive issues. I started the Water Management District Caucus. Did you know that? That has half of the members of the Florida House and half of the Senate within it. I held educational seminars up there. I asked people from this area here to come up. You know who showed up? Jackie. You know who showed up? Mr. Polk showed up, and other members of DEP. Nobody from this organization came. Okay, I asked for that. So for you to ask me to be your champion, that goes both ways. I have shown up, I've shown up here again. Part of the battle is actually showing up and being a part of it. The last time that I presented in front of this institution, in this group, I was ridiculed, I was shot down, and I was basically yelled out of here. Okay, even though I showed up and my priority was still to work on environmental issues, which I did. And I will continue to do that because it is the best thing for the state of Florida. It is the best thing for this region. I don't want to go through another summer like what we had before. It's the last thing in the world I want to do. But that's why I go to the environmental conferences on my own dime. That's why I go to do other things like that. I want to have a better region here. I'd love to be able to continue to have reports like we did this last year of sea turtles in the river here eating off of my friend's dock. And that was probably a half-mile downriver from here. I would love to have those reports continue. I'd love to be able to stand on the drawbridge out here and be able to see the bottom. That would be incredible. I'd like to see the rolling tarpon off of on the North Fork and hear of additional reports. That would be ideal. Okay, and I would continue to work for that. But again, it goes both ways. I'm willing to do the work. I try to demonstrate that I'm willing to do it. But what I get back from this group is that I'm not good enough. I'm selling out to everybody, and that's just simply not the case. I say no to a lot of those groups that you bastardize and you look at in a bad way. And I continually say yes to the environment. So, that's also your choice. I appreciate your question. I really do. And I appreciate both of us having a frank exchange. So I sincerely, again, will continue to show up and we'll continue to work hard, not only for this organization, but also for the region.
Let me quick follow up on that with a very specific question. If we wind up with another lost summer this summer, what legislation would you be willing to sponsor in Tallahassee next session to address it?
I mean, Blake, Gil, I don't have a magic wand. I wish I did. I wish I could say, all right, I'm taking all the legacy nutrient out. I'm taking all of the, I will never have another discharge down the river. I would love to say that I can do that. I can't. What I can do is continue to work towards the problem, taking bites at this, lowering, hopefully, the nutrients that's going in that's causing this issue, hopefully continuing to add additional flow going south. I think that's what we have to do. Continue to work with our partners on the state side. Hopefully the federal government will add some more money in. Continue those relationships. I can't make promises. I'd love to say I can wave a magic wand and this is exactly what's going to happen. But I'll tell you what, I'll be one of the loudest people up there and screaming about this and yelling about this because it is something that, it does. I am fearful on it. I live on the C-23. I see the things that go by, and I certainly want to make sure that we don't have a lost summer.
Let me ask about two specific possibilities. Number one, would you support the acquisition of additional land south of Lake Okeechobee for water storage? That has been a big issue for a lot of these people. We believe whatever's being done in terms of EAA reservoir, however well that works, it's still not going to be enough to end discharges. Would you support an effort? Would you initiate an effort to acquire more land south of the lake?
Well, let me first answer, I don't think we'll ever not have any discharges, whether it's a local basin. And I think, that's something that we keep overlooking is how much water. Right now we're not having the discharges, yet you're having dark water heading out our estuary. And all that is a local basin runoff that needs to be dealt with. That's a serious issue. So it's not just what's happening to our west, although that's a huge contributor. We've got to deal with that, and whether that's the C-23 connector, et cetera. Within the bill that we just passed, it's waiting the governor's signature. There's $100 million annually in there to do additional purchases. And it is the language that is in there is specifically for the environmental programs, from water storage to wildlife corridor to others. So it's a great amount of land. Look, if there's a piece of land that fixes everything, trust me, I'll be in on that. But I don't know that there is right now. And as you also know, we have to do a balancing act between our environment and our economy. And I think that we have to be looking at both of those things for the state of Florida. We can't just look at only one of them, because the economy is what fuels our environmental restoration, as you're acutely aware. So I would certainly look at ways that we can acquire more land, no doubt about it. And that's why it's in this bill.
Before we go, other questions? Do you have another one, Casey? Yeah, let me get Todd here real quick.
No, you had a second.
I'll waive it just to give you folks some time.
Just a very quick follow-up. In a solutions-oriented fashion, looking towards action next session, would you be willing to work with members of this coalition and membership organizations to sponsor something that we can all feel good about for our waters here?
Yeah, sure. Bring ideas, bring things like that, and work on it. Let's work on it over the summer. I'll tell you what, I can live with as a conservative Republican, and let's look at different things. I'm open to items and ideas. Absolutely. And I know you've been waiting patiently.
Thank you. When I talked to you in reference to sponsoring a bill for wastewater to energy, I wasn't asking you to make a bill to force local governments to do that. What I wanted was for the state to help subsidize the cost, knowing that there is going to be more of an expense than they can deal with at this point. And it's not as if the government doesn't do subsidies for all kinds of work. Another thing is, you talked about properties that are under $5 million, fast tracking that. And I don't think you're talking about the government's purchase of properties for the wildlife corridors and the STAs, et cetera. Are you making sure that there's still enough time to do the environmental impact studies? Because I did see a problem with that when even the Crosstown Parkway Bridge was being put in, and they did a study, and they were talking about just land crabs. Well, they did the study when the land crabs weren't coming up from the water to spawn. So the study was worthless. And I did also want you to know that I just a couple of weeks ago spoke to the DEP in reference to doing testing. There was a property going in and they were going to be filling in a wetland, but the property had many wetlands. And I said, are you going to be monitoring to make sure that when they fill in the one, that the others were not drained and only the one was? And they said, no, we don't do any monitoring at all. It's up to the company to hire a business to do it and then just send us the information. So you never know.
I'm gonna grab the mic before I get a third question or fourth question. First of all, that's probably a water management district permit that looked at the filling of that area. That they don't do the monitoring. The monitoring is supposed to be put in as part of the permit. That happens when they are allowed to, if they are allowed to fill one wetland, then they had to have a permit to be able to do that. So then you're right, DEP typically doesn't cover that, but that's usually a water management district thing. On the wastewater side of it, yes, there's grants for innovative technology and innovative opportunities there. Certainly, if there is something that comes forward that needs some state monies with it, absolutely, let's bring it forward. Let's look at some ways that we can deal with that. What I was saying is that I just can't write legislation that mandates a certain technology must be used. So I'm glad we got that cleared up. And the other one was, on the $5 million. No, it doesn't deal with private individual. This is for purchasing of land by the government for things like the wildlife corridor, for things like land preservation. Has nothing to deal with private. Sure.
On septic to sewer, are you saying that any new building has to go to sewer. It cannot go to septic.
For a new building that is adjacent to a new septic line. What, I'm getting there. So I'm getting there. So if a new sewer line is in the roadway and they're doing a new community, they have to be on sewer at that point in time. If there's not a new sewer line that is within the area of that new building, they must utilize the new OSTDS standards, which is a reduction of phosphorus and nitrogen is reduced, I believe, by 50% over the current technologies.
Reason I asked is up north, if it's not there, the builder has to make it wherever it is.
Well, we have a lot more areas that land is way outside an area where current septic is. So, but in the future, hopefully that won't be.
All right, we need to wrap this up here. I'm going to pass this down here for a couple of questions.
Okay, so a few minutes ago, Representative Overdorf, you said, I don't think we'll ever not have any discharges. And Mickey, if you could just scroll to the top of the agenda here, because it has the Rivers Coalition mission statement, which is to stop discharges into the St. Lucie River from Lake Okeechobee. I'll stop there. So I'd like you to encourage you to think about what's possible here. And I hear you working hard on a lot of incremental progress, but we need bold action to achieve this, and it is possible. So please consider that.
So I'll answer your statement with a statement as well. And I appreciate you challenging me. I really do. I think that when I make a statement like that, right now, the C-44 is an emergent. I would like to look at it as an emergency valve. Let's say that we get a 26-inch rain event that's in the central region and all of that is coming down through. There is going to have to be an emergency discharge at that point in time. We all know it, it's going to happen. That's why I think that we will never fully stop discharges. Do I hope that there is a day when they are very rare and infrequent? Absolutely, I do. But it would be an inaccurate statement for me to say there will never be a discharge again. And I don't think that that is reality. But I think that we're on the same page and I'm generally near your mission statement. Oh, jeez. She never gives me a break.
Representative Overdorf, thank you very much for being here today. In your OSTDS legislation proposals, are there provisions for inspections of OSTDS that are new and going online?
That's a great question. And there was a specific bill that would have required that was shot down once again this year. There was I'm not exactly sure who did, but that was, there was an inspection bill associated with OSTDS. There's also a bill that dealt with the connection of sewer lines from the home to the roadway, which is something that needs to be addressed as well. Both of those. I had sponsored the connection twice, and it was shot down in the last minute. Let me see, septic inspection is being done by a gal on the West Coast, and maybe the two of us can work together and do something. Yeah, we'll see what happens. Sure. Sure. Thank you.
All right, we're going to wrap this up now, but I want to thank Representative Overdorf for being here, taking the questions. Yeah. I think we put some tough questions to him, and I appreciate him standing up here and taking it and dishing it out. So thank you very much.
John Mel, Martin County report.
I'll keep it brief, and I'm actually just going to use this time as a public service announcement for opportunities for Martin County residents coming up. To Overdorf's statement about discharges always being here, that's good news. We'll continue to get to meet together every third Thursday. I mean, what else would we do? Sorry. I'm glad you guys can laugh, because this next one I really don't want to say either. I hate to bring it up in the context of legislation and particularly the governor and cabinet's meeting yesterday, but if you're interested in golf course best management practices. June 6th, we're having a panel assembled to speak to the Board of County Commissioners to talk about what modern golf course design includes and what the new best management practices are that the governor signed into law last July. I'm actually kind of excited about it. Don't skewer me for this, but Dr. Unra from UF, who authored the BMPs for golf courses, and he goes around the world really talking about water quality design factors for golf courses, is going to be there to present that for us. So he's an incredible resource. I urge you to come and hear about some of the cool things that they're doing. Also really want to push our new ecotourism program. There is a website you should all check out and mark in your favorites. It's discovermartin.com/ and I believe it's a / ecotourism. Or if you're kind of a boomer like me, just Google, what is it? Do you remember? No, it's not it. You're gonna have to go to the website. There's a way you can Google it and get to it, but it's a really cool website. It's user friendly, and the most important factor on it, among a lot of other things, is it lays out the schedule of opportunities for you to go get some nature programming for free in Martin County. We had our second event yesterday, which was a coastal dune walk with Mike Houston at Beach Walk Paisley, and last week Carly, our arborist, did a walk at Halpatioke. It's really, really cool opportunities for small groups to get out and learn about the great resources you have in your backyard. And like I said, it's totally free, but you do have to register ahead of time. And then my last comment is, I'm kind of excited about this. We are probably the second board meeting in June. We will be acquiring Audubon, Martin County's 119 acres of natural lands that they've acquired over the years. We worked out a deal with their board. It's good for everybody. They're going to have a little bit of capital to do some additional programming at the Nature Center. And we have some opportunities for land management that an NGO wouldn't have. And so we'll be able to provide some exotic removal and some restoration work on those lands. The largest part would be islands in the South Fork. So that's exciting. And then also, if you are available next Friday, the County Coalition will be meeting in Okeechobee, Friday, June 2nd. We'll get great presentations from the Corps and the Water Management District, and look forward to seeing you all there. That's all. Thank you.
Ben, can you come up and show John what brief comments mean?
You got the wrong guy. No, I didn't want to say too much because there's already been so much dialogue today, so I'm not going to get too much into that. Just a couple of brief announcements, because you will be seeing something in the news for the city of Stuart over the next month and a half. And I definitely don't want the wrong information to get out there. Staff aren't going to be able to really talk about it, but we are going forward with our multi-district litigation on the PFAS contamination, perfluorinated octanoic acid, perfluorinated sulfonic acid. So those are our two contaminations that are in our drinking water, or have been in our ground supply, is what I should say. We haven't actually been over a federally mandated or a federal advisory for the last few years that we've known about the contamination. But with that said, this whole litigation that's going forward, a lot of people are going to have questions. You're going to see it all over the Wall Street Journal, New York Times, everything. This is probably the largest environmental litigation in the last 3 or 4 decades. In the city of Stuart, just by circumstance and a heck of a lot of circumstances actually, is the bellwether case. So we have a whole set of staff. I can't tell you how many trial law firms and law firms that are representing us up there in South Carolina. So this is going to go forward. I just want to throw it out there. The city's water supply is safe to drink. That's not the issue. This has to do with the contamination, how we're going to remediate it, how we're going to clean it up over time, because it affects soil. It affects all of us. So you're going to see it in the news. We're not going to be able to talk a lot about it, but I think it's important that we identify that this is a pretty big deal for us. And we're going for, it's a class action and there's over 4,500 plaintiffs already in this. And we're just getting started on these kinds of lawsuits nationwide. So that's a big deal. If you have questions about it, you can always contact us. We're just not going to be able to give too many specifics. And the other thing I wanted to mention, we do have a new city manager, Mike Mortel, our former city attorney, and still an attorney. So if you have questions, you can either direct them to myself or to him, and I'm sure he'd be happy to speak with you as well. And then the last thing is more for the core. It's kind of me with both a city cap and my own personal cap. John yelled fire earlier in the year. I'm going to do it right now. My concern in the next few months, and it's I see where the lake levels are. I understand the challenges we have. I looked at the ENSO forecast and I couldn't be any more concerned than I am right now. Just for everybody's sake, ENSO, El Nino, Southern Oscillation, it's a complex set of different variables that are affecting our weather all across the globe all the time. Reality is we're probably looking at an extremely wet next several months going into winter. And I know you'll probably hear that more and more when you see the ENSO forecast coming out. It's a high probability, 90% of a potentially even strong El Nino season. And the other thing that concerns me is the Atlantic Ocean is on fire right now. I've never seen anything like it. I'm talking to National Weather Service meteorologists and other doctors that I'm actually personally friends with, and I've never seen them so concerned. And I'm not personally have never been this concerned about tropical weather outlook and everything. So not to be the doom and gloom of the day, but to say the least, and this is especially for the course purposes, I am concerned about the lake levels. I'm concerned about how much water we're seeing. And in the next, 3 to 4 weeks, the weather that we've been having the last couple of days is it seems like become pretty commonplace. So June's looking like it's going to be a very wet month for us. And it's just something to consider, not to be surprised by. And certainly now that we're waiting for LOSUM to go into effect, that brings more frustration, I think, from the public and from our folks on what the continuation for the next 6 months of LORS management is going to look like when those discharges come. So just wanted to throw that out there. Sorry, Todd. Appreciate it. But just some thoughts. If anybody has questions, feel free to contact me directly. Be happy to help.
Jackie,
Thank you. Hi, I'm Jackie Thurlow Lippish, River Warrior, and also your representative for the South Florida Water Management District at this time. I'm an at-large member for the entire East Coast down to Monroe from St. Lucie County, but my heart is always here, and you know that. I think right off the bat, I'd like to talk about the lake. Todd, can you put up my husband is gone, so I don't have anybody to fly around and take pictures. Dr. Scott Coons has taken a couple close to the gate at S80, and there has been algae there, as we know, and it comes and goes. So if Todd isn't able to get that up, I'll just say that the algae has basically moved with the wind, which is what happens. It moves with temperature and particularly wind. And early on in the reports from Josh Rowe from the DEP and the Army Corps of Engineers and the South Florida Water Management District, you would see some of the algae right off of S308, which is Port Mayaca. In the past week or so, it has moved and intensified more southwest in the lake, as you can see. We are in a good place in that just prior to last meeting, I think it was April 15th, the Army Corps, with the support of the South Florida Water Management District, made the determination to close the gates, and they have remained closed. Yesterday, the lake was at 13.72, and that is not 12.5, but it's lower. But we're getting there. We're getting lower. So I am not doom and gloom. I am happy that the lake is lowering. There's been a lot of evaporation off the lake. That's a good thing. And the culture of the South Florida Water Management District and the Army Corps working together as the district being the local partner for the South Florida for the Army Corps of Engineers with the Central and South Florida Plan, is to not discharge, especially when there is algae in front of those gates or anywhere where it would be coming in. So I want to again thank the Army Corps for their partnership. So that's it with the lake. I also want to say it was really refreshing. You can turn the lights on. Thank you. To see the conversation with Representative Overdorf. And we do not always agree on everything together, but we have to be able to talk. We have to be able to sit in a room together and say, I'm sorry, I don't support this, or I do support this. Unfortunately, I am being punished by the state legislature, as some of you know, because I did not agree with some of the things that were put forward in a bill called 2508 last year, which was a very intense bill. We probably don't even remember it anymore, but I was very outspoken. I said I did not agree, and that is the reason why I see it as being punished by the particularly the Senate and the president of the Senate. I can say it, I'll say it, and I will take the repercussions. And the bottom line is I was not approved to be the continuing South Florida Water Management representative from this area. The way it works politically is when you're not, first of all, you're appointed by the governor and then you're confirmed by the Senate. So I was second time appointed by the governor. I was not reconfirmed by the Senate this past legislative session. So the politics of that, which all this really is that there is the opportunity to be reappointed by the governor. And that would have to happen by June 19th. If I am not reappointed by June 19th, there will be a vacancy, which there really is now. And there may be no representation for this area indefinitely, or perhaps somebody else right now is putting in their application, and that is fair and square. And I encourage everyone from every background to put in their application. And I will just say that I got this position 4 years ago, not by asking, by being asked if I wanted it, and I took it. And I got this position because I have always been outspoken. And if I lose this position because I am outspoken, praise the Lord. It's not a problem for me. Okay, I wear it as a badge of honor. I do respect the Senate, and I do respect the state legislature, and I do especially respect the president of the Senate. If we remember, Joe Negron was the one who moved the ball for us bigger than anyone else, in my opinion, and that's why we're here today. And our governor, you know, we are all working as hard as we can, but we have to be able to have the conversation. And I have to say for Toby, you know, we are tough on Toby, but also you have to realize that when Toby's up there, he doesn't have a lot of support. Okay, so the best way to get Toby to be doing the things that we are encouraging him to do is for more people to run and more people to be environmentally oriented, who are, whether you're Republican, a Democrat, or an independent, and be up there as a team player. Don't be sitting here on the sidelines criticizing people for something that you don't do yourself. We should all be supporting each other. We should all support our First Amendment right in this country, which is free speech. So, sorry, I just had to say it. And as far as good things being done by the South Florida Water Management District, at our last meeting in Naples, Ernie Cox, who you may know, and his mother is in this room. Stand, would you stand, Mom? Give her a round of applause for being a great mom. Her son helped broker a deal for the Green Heart of the Everglades, which is 11,000 acres, which are being added below Fakahatchee Strand and Big Cypress, where I went with Nick Mader for a girls' weekend a year ago, and the panther habitat up there. And there is, you know, there are so many good things going on right now with the wildlife corridor, with, you know, land acquisition monies we need to come together and stop hating each other or criticizing each other for not having the same basic beliefs. We have a belief that we all agree on, and that is that nature, and I call it God's nature. People might just call it nature, water, the animals, the trees. We love this part of our county and our state, and it is something we can all agree on together to support. I thank you for the time I have had to support you, and I hope I have more. In any case, wherever I am, I will be trying to stop the discharges to the St. Lucie River. Thank you.
Before we go on to the next, the Rivers Coalition has contacted the governor and asked that Jackie remain. And I would ask that if each of you could get your organization to contact the governor and let him know that Jackie has been the best representative that we've had on the district, and we would like to see her continue. We would really appreciate it. Right. Colonel Polk.
Hey, thank you, everyone, and wow, good afternoon already. Like everyone, yeah, hey, the lake is, like you said, we're about 13.8 feet today. We've seen a trend of about 0.01 foot increase in the last week. We're dropping well. I think when you do look short term, not to be doom and gloom, expect about a 1.75 inches of rain over the next week or so. But I think beyond that week, I think we're looking for a little dry out. So, I'm still hoping, much like 2021, where we'll see continued drop before we go into full on turning back up on the lake. We will continue to do as we are, of not releasing through the S80 or out of 308. And again, you saw the algae, and I will tell you right now that, if something does come bad or where we have to release, it is Colonel Booth's decision alone. We'll make that call if anything has to be opened up and there is algae at the gate. So I can promise you that. That is, of course, the last case scenario that we want to do. There's still a lot of acre feet in the bank, right? So that 810,000 acre feet that we banked is still in there, and that allows us to keep the beneficial flows going west to the Caloosahatchee at 1,800 cubic feet per second. And I would just tell you, yes, I think we all heard, if you got a chance to see Representative Mass speak with NIMS the other day, and that was very frank, very blunt. I don't think we got anything we hadn't heard or knew already as an agency, or at least our agency, anything new. But the key is we can maximize, again, our beneficial releases as we need to. We can operate the lake as we have, in the sense of, hey, the Herbert Hoover Dike is rehabilitated, and that's what's important on our ability to operate with the flexibility that we have under LORS. So I think that's a good thing. We'll pick back up, just so everyone's tracking a media call. I don't know if it's still in the room here, but we'll do that, start that again next on the 9th of June. We'll probably kick out our wet season strategy op-ed earlier that week to let everybody know where we're seeing and what we're looking at. Again, as we talk with South Florida Water Management District and team, and make sure we're making the best decisions we can. I think the other big one coming up, Surfer Task Force, is next week in April in Naples. It's the big, so that's sponsored by the Office of Everglades Restoration Initiative, OERI. So they'll be coming down. We'll have that big panel, have quite a few discussion points on that. Assistant Secretary Connor will come in. So he's our big chief at the for civil works at the assistant secretary level. He'll be down for that. And that's always a great thing. I would tell you, since he's been in his position, he's been down here at least 4 times, and his predecessor twice as well. So we get a lot of love and a lot of attention from him, and that's fantastic. But really, I think that's the biggest thing I have to address or answer or start with. If you got some questions, I'm here to take them.
Thank you. Dr. Gray?
No, I'm not leaving town. I will be transitioning later on this summer, so it'd be around September. We'll be major core development coming in. You'll see me. It'll be in early August. But I'm not leaving. Staying in South Florida. And that's not a good thing. I will be fine. Thank you very much.
Is Nick Mater here?
Thank you. I'm gonna have the River Kids come back and ask the representative personally to sponsor some legislation. Just kidding. The River Kids are going to be interested in getting out in the water this summer. We're hoping to have some events, get them out there, get them connected with the waters. It's not on the agenda because I just found out a bit about it, but Orca is doing a shoreline planting. Those are the types of things that we want the kids to get out and get involved in, see how they can help use their hands, either get wet, get in the dirt, and really work towards helping our environment. So that's what I have for the River Kids, and we'll have more next meetings. Thank you.
Thank you. Todd?
I'm Todd Weising. I'm the coordinator of the Rivers Coalition's Speakers Bureau. We've been busy. Last month, we visited with the Circle Bay Yacht and Sailing Club, very active group. That's the third time they've invited us over the last 12 years that I've been associated with the Speakers Bureau. Next month, we're going to see the Conservation Alliance of St. Lucie County. If you have a meeting and you need a speaker, go to the website, click on request a speaker, and we'll be there. I don't care where it is, what time, we'll be there. Let me also add one other thing. This is a great little device, this phone. Jackie's here. We talked about sending a letter from organizations. Just Google, contact Ron DeSantis, send him your message. It's got to help, okay? I suggest you do it. I'm going to do it today.
Thank you. Jim, the Riverkeeper report?
I don't have the official report for the local conditions. I'm Jim Moyer, the Indian Riverkeeper. There's a lot of turbidity in the local estuary. It has persisted since Nicole. It is certainly impeding seagrass recovery. I will tell you some good news is that, I'm regularly seeing sea turtles and I'm regularly seeing manatee attempting to make a living in our lagoon. And I think they're doing a really amazing job of staying alive and keeping around and giving us a really good reason to keep pushing for clean water. I also want to sort of recommend to you all to take notice that this is graduation season, and we've got some of the most amazing young people that have been inspired by advocacy to do the right things and to engage in public policy and to really be a bright light for the future. And I am so impressed with what the River Kids has imagined and pushed forward into our futures, as well as all the other organizations up and down the Indian River Lagoon that have created kids that care. And I couldn't be prouder of what the lagoon has inspired in our future generations. And I think some of that is because you all have supported them. And thank you.
Casey, did you want to?
All right, so our water quality report from last week is showing a decent lagoon. The North Fork is looking not great. Salinity wise, we have had some basin runoff. And you can find this on our website. The latest one will come out tomorrow for this past week. I expect it to probably look the same. We have got some rain this week. But what I wanted to also point out is I sent the link. So look in the meeting notes for this meeting. We talked about the BMAPs and I sent Mickey the presentation that DEP went over for their 5-year BMAP update or BMAP review, draft BMAP review for 5 years. That is the one that recommends that 5-year extension of the deadline. It also has graphs that show us not meeting the TMDL at the 10-year or the 15-year milestones. So take a look at that. The public comment period is over for that one. But we did submit public comments along with other groups. And that's something that we really, as the Rivers Coalition and citizens here, we really need to stay on top of. We can't let that deadline be pushed down the road any further without an actionable plan to take care of the nutrients that are going into the watershed. And then the other thing that I sent out, Jackie mentioned it last time, was the South Florida system update. It's up there. This is a great tool. I use it every day. I check this. I check the Corps daily status update. I make sure that the gates are closed. I make sure that if there's algae, like all of the things are lining up. So this is a great tool. I linked the email to request this. You just email Josh Rowe. You say, can I please receive the South Florida system update? And this will be in your inbox every day. And you can go over this and see what's going on. It's a great snapshot. So I encourage everyone to do that. If you have any questions, please reach out. And then because I'm holding everyone from lunch, I'm going to be quick, but FOS also, Florida Oceanographic did also draft a letter in support of Jackie, and we will be sending that today. So we just want to thank her for all she's done for our waters. We always appreciate it. And thank you all for giving me a chance to speak.
Thank you. Todd?
Okay, I think I might be last and I'm holding everybody up, so I'll try to be really quick. Okay, you can get me on the screen. Is the screen share working? Or did the screen just go out? It looks like our monitor's out here locally. Here it comes. It's coming up. What happened to our share? This will stop the other screen. You're sharing your screen. I need to share my screen. Yeah, and then can you put me on the monitor? There you go. All right, thanks. So yeah, if you can see that on the monitor, it's a little small. It's not full screen. Yeah, the lake's at 13.82. Interestingly, right now, I think with all the local, the rain we're getting, they're having to drain the local basin. So I just noticed that S77 seemed like it closed this morning. So that means no water's going east or west right now, and it's all local drainage coming out. To do the seagrass report, this is the seagrasses as of the 20th, 5 days ago on Sailfish Flats. I haven't been out there in a long time, but it seems like it's slowly getting darker and darker out there. So I hope that's more and more grass. This was the last more clear one on the 10th. But to scroll back to 2017, I always go back, or 2007, sorry, that's what it looked like in 2007. It went completely, bare sand for a long time after the lost summers, and it's been trying to come back every summer, but the summer's looking a lot better than prior. This is that eco envelope graph. And so like they've been saying in the meeting today, with the rains, you see the little blip up, so the lake has jumped up just a little bit here in the last day or two. So that's a little concerning. Rainfall page, these are linked on the South Florida Water Management District. They're also linked on my Eye on Lake O site. But when you look on here, you can see, you put your cursor over one of the basins, it'll tell you the average rainfall. So it says that the average rainfall over Lake Okeechobee was a ½ inch in the last, and I believe this is the 24-hour graph. Yes, in the last 24 hours has been a ½ inch on average over the lake. So we took a sneak peek of this during Jackie's report. And so this was the algae that kind of, appeared little south, in the southeast corner of the lake. And so this is the 19th. And then, yeah, Pahokee, it's right there. I mean, there's that's the canal, what do you call it? The rim canal that goes around. So it's kind of weird. I mean, you really focus on that. It almost, I'm not gonna say it's coming out of the canal, but it's weird the way it's almost looks like it's flowing right out of the canal. And then this is the next day on the Sentinel satellite. So it's, kind of bloomed up. That's natural, true color. This is the infrared of that same bloom. So it's getting bigger on the 20th. And then I guess that's all I had for that satellite. But on the, let me get the other one up if I can figure out what tab I'm on here. So here's the same thing, the 19th. So you see it on the NOAA, right down there in the same corner on the 19th. And then you go to the 20th, there was no image. And then there it is again. So the winds were coming out of the east. So if you ask me as a non-scientist, I'm just making observations. It seems like the wind just kind of blew it from the east side of the lake over the west side of the lake. So it kind of moves over some more. And then on the 23rd, it's getting all concentrated down there now on the south west part of the lake. And that's about it. I mean, last report, or last meeting, people were talking about the sargassum offshore, and I actually had this image from when I went out fishing on the 15th, I guess. There's huge patches of sargassum out there. I mean, it's not really unusual, and I've seen it in the past, but this was just a couple of days ago. So folks out there, it's about 11 miles offshore. There's large sargassum patches out there, but that's what the fishermen look for. They maybe are larger than normal. There's a bunch right now off of the Fort Pierce Inlet too that shows up on this satellite imagery. But you measure these things, and one of them's 15.4 acres. So it's like a 15-acre patch of seagrass out there. So if anybody's interested in it. Well, the funny thing is, I was actually on vacation. I was in Costa Rica and catching sailfish, and I'm like, we catch sailfish in Stewart. Can you find me something else? And then my daughter went out fishing on Sunday, and they just got a bunch of dolphin and all sorts of stuff with her, former high school, they're freshmen in college. These kids go out and just clean up on the fish, but they weren't out there. They were closer. That's my report. Unless anyone has any questions.
Diane?
Hi. You know that I'm the ambassador for the Right to Clean Water. And we're going to have an event over at a festival on June 10th and 11th. And I left some forms out there. If you could take it, we need to have volunteers, even if you come a couple of hours, 1 out of the 2 days. Every little bit helps, because if I do it and I'm having one person sign a form, there's 10 others that are going by that I've missed. So we need your help. And if you can send it out to your groups too, so people can contact me, this is important. That's what clean water is all about, that we want preventative measures, not just cleanup. Cleanup is forever. If we have preventative measures, there'll be an end to the cleanup. So your help is imperative, and I would appreciate that. Thank you.
That's it. Does anybody else have any announcements? Yes.
I just got something to say. My very good friend Jack. We need to keep her. And I don't know if anybody ever goes to her blog. And I get her email every week. You want to learn about the area? Go to her blog.
Thank you. That's it. I really appreciate everybody coming, and we look forward to seeing you again next month.